Okay, so my name is Daniela. I am obviously not Norwegian, but I'm coming from Norway exactly now, but I am from Brazil. And I have been in Norway for 10 years now. So I don't know anymore if I'm Brazilian or Norwegian or whatever. But people ask me, like, where are you from? And I still pause and then say, I'm coming from Norway, but I'm Brazilian. Yeah. I have been coming to Poland since 2013 because Norwegian companies are outsourcing quite a lot to Poland. So I have been doing research for a while and then coming here, and I love to come. So every time someone invites me, I come. So it's quite a pleasure to be here. I don't know why, but I really like to come. So. So I am a research scientist, but I have two jobs. I am a research scientist in a research institute in Norway. It's an independent, non-profit research institute that we have in Norway. And I am also working in a company that has outsourcing here in Warsaw. So that's why I also come quite a lot. In my research time, I am a research scientist including software security activities in deployment and continuous development. But when I am working on the company, I'm actually trying to do it. So then I see now how hard it is, things that we say, like, just do it, as if it was the simplest thing ever. But now I'm really seeing how it is hard to do sometimes. So this talk is about this. It's about what we found out with the companies that we work with in this project. It's a 5-year research project that we work with different companies. And I work in Fara. That is a company that creates mobile apps for ticketing and also real-time information in buses and so on. The one in Warszawa is not ours, and we don't have a system running here in Poland yet. But we have in Oulu, and we have also in Scandinavia, in many places in Norway and Sweden and so on. And now we are expanding a bit of our systems as well. But the talk today is going to be kind of like a mix of like what we have in Fara, but also what I see in other companies and what we see research going and what we find in different research. Yeah. So if you have any questions, you can just ask along the way. But one of the things that we started in 2014-15 to think was that we went to many companies, and then the focus of security was very low. And then what we found out was, like, as we went more and more into Agile, less and less focus in security it was in the software development. So then, like, before, like, the classical thing about security was, like, to have specific points in time that you would review your design for security, you would review your software for security, and so on. But this was not so possible anymore, especially when you have this thing of continuous deployment and continuous delivery. Then what happened was that then the developers were thinking, like, we don't need to do this anymore. But that's not true, right? You have to do this, and you have to do actually all the time. And then our main challenge was like, okay, so then how can we do this and not prevent people to have functionalities out? And then also not avoiding this thing of having the gates that you have to say, like, okay, you cannot deploy unless you have done all these things. So then that was our main challenge. And then another challenge we had was that we have always to think that whatever we propose the teams to do towards security, we have always to take in account that they are self-managed teams. Right? So then we cannot think that someone from our external side or some expert in security will come and like assure the security of the system. So that was very important for us, and that is also what we always talk to the companies about. And then what I mean about security, this thing doesn't work very well. It's like a software security initiative. So then I'm not talking about IT security, network security, and all those things that are much more established in the companies, but we were much more worried about like what happens in a daily basis, what happens with the developers, how can they have more focus on security and build this confidence that we are deploying every day, but our software is secure, or we have handled security as good as we could. Right? So then that is also another thing that we were thinking. How much is enough security? So that is a hard question for us, and it was also for the companies. But when we talk about software security, we cannot talk only about the technical parts of it. We have to talk about like everything else that we have to do in a company to make sure that we are addressing security in a good way. Okay? And when I talk about software security as well, I don't talk only about security features. That is, for example, access control, authentication, authorization, but it is about everything else that you do to make sure that you are going to be able to handle well an attack. Okay? So to me, I think that's like if I had only these slides, I would be fine. But to me, it's about like if you're going to think about how to do security, software security in your development lifecycle, it's about what are you going to do to pick up your fruits. And the fruits for me are the vulnerabilities. So whatever you're going to do, that you're going to be able to pick whatever you can before it goes to production. So to me, it's like this, like there are things that just because you're a good developer, you are able to just have this covered, you know? So then, for example, good input validation, that is basic. And if you go to the top 10 of ASP, that's like the top 10 vulnerabilities that you see everywhere. Most of it, if you are good on doing input validation, you were just good. You know, you didn't need to worry much about that. So those are what I call like ground fruits. Like there are, if you get an attack, and it was because you didn't do that, is very a shame on you. So like I always say to the guys that I work with, I'm like, please, the only thing that I cannot handle is that we get an attack that it was because of this. If you get that, I will be really, really shameful. So that is kind of the basic thing. And then there are things that, like, if you put a little bit more effort, you will be able to take. Usually, like, for example, if you have a better static analysis tools, if you have a little bit more focus on security, do code review, and that you take a look on security and so on, you will be able to take those ones. It's not like the perfect thing, because, like, you know, static analysis tools, they just automate what we know about, right? And what we can do about. Then it comes a bit more of like the vulnerabilities that you are not able to pick up with these small things, but you have to put a little bit more effort. You have to take a look on your design, what you're doing in your design, what you're doing in the way you develop things, in the way that you deploy things. And then there are the sweet fruits that maybe you will never catch, and they will go to production. And that's fine also, because we cannot have 100% security. So another thing that we had also of problem is like we have always to balance the cost and what is our ambitions about securities, right? So then you have to think like my ambition, it's kind of like, to begin with, I said, like, my ambition is actually here. If you're good with this, I'm fine. Now I'm kind of like here and here, and I'm like, okay, now if you are here, for some teams, I'm fine, and then for some teams, I want there, you know? So that is also something that you can decide with your teams. You can say, like, this product here is end-of-life product. We are not going to go all the way to get all the way. Right? But like, if it's a product that is very important for you, and you have a lot of customers, and it's going to be very important, you may require that they go all the way, you know? Yeah, so then what does it mean practically? It means a lot of things, and I didn't know how to put all these things together, but I tried to think of like 10 things that usually when we go to a company and they say to us, we would like to improve software security here, what do I say to them? So the first one is what I said. You have to define your own adequate level of security. So when I put adequate, it depends on so many things. It's hard to explain, but it's like, it's about how long it's going to run, how many customers you have, what is the strategy of the company. And then, in most of the companies, it is about regulations. So, for example, GDPR, how do you call GDPR in Poland? There is a name. Yeah, that thing. So GDPR was like a big thing in Norway. So then we managed to get a lot of things going, a lot of resources for security just because of GDPR. Even though GDPR is about privacy, it impacted a lot on the software security part. Because many of the programs and many of the certification bodies and so on, they focus on the security by design, right? So then we had to start thinking, and we know that there are some things that they are going to look when they come to an audit. So that helped us a lot to get money for security and to get focus for security. But each one of your companies may have other regulations that you also have to comply. So that is also may set where you're going to be. Now our customers in this company I work, they are starting to ask much more of like ISO 27001. They are starting to ask more about our procedures in security and so on. So this is also something that is setting our level of security on where we should be. Because if we don't have those things in place, probably they're not going to buy our services. You know? So these are also things that are changing and sets where you're going to have to be. So the other one is like, okay, then you have to assess, right? Where are you? Do you know where are you in your companies in terms of software security? Okay. So there are different ways to do that. And like there is OpenSun, that is the OWASP maturity model, that they have a set of things that's like, they say, okay, if you do these activities, you're getting level 1. If you are these activities, you are level 2 and level 3 and so on. And then there is BSIM, that is also, in the beginning, they started together, then they had a fight. And then BSIM was more like commercial type. And then it's like a set of 112 now, I think, activities that you can do. And then like they go to different companies and they try to see what are the companies doing and what are the companies not doing towards software security. So everything is based on software security. Then the OSAM was like diverging, and then they have the whole OWASP behind them. Do you know OWASP? Everyone knows OWASP? Okay. Yeah. So then OWASP is the group of people, nerds, that goes together and then they try to see what is the best thing to do, best practices in software security and so on. They get together every year and they have a lot of different things that they propose. A lot of good ideas comes from there. The top 10 OWASP is like they set up the 10 most common vulnerabilities in web, in mobile, and in cloud. And then they have different people, and it's all like voluntary work. So it's quite a lot of good knowledge base. And then, of course, you can use the ISO standards, even though this is for information security. It's helping us also to create kind of a more set of basic things that we need to do as well in software security. Just for you to have an idea, this is the new SUM 2.0 that was released this year. And then before, they didn't have much focus on DevOps, but then now it's a much bigger focus and much better focus on DevOps. And then they included this in the implementation part, a secure build and a secure deployment. So like many of the presentations that we had today was also about that. So then how do you do a secure build? So then it's when you focus on putting tools like static analysis tools and all the tools as part of your build, right? So then a continuous a security deployment, we saw in this presentation today. So that is one of the ways you could do, right? So then there are many other ways, but then this is one of the things you could do, and that will help you to have a much better secure deployment. And then also they added this part of the operations that was also, at least in Norway, we don't have much focus on this part of incident management, environment management, and operational management. So this is also some other part that they added more focus in this year. Does everyone know about this OWASP? Some. Who doesn't know? Okay. Okay, so then it's a known technique then. So these, usually what we do is that we go to the companies, we ask them to answer like yes or no, and then I try to see where they are. And then you can start from there and say like, okay, where are we weak? And then this is where you can improve and start to focus on. Then, of course, when you decide like what is it that you are weak, you have to formally include these things as part of your security process and the development process. One thing that we are doing with especially small companies is that we start with the Microsoft Agile Security Development Lifecycle, because actually they have a lot of good ideas. So it's not that you're going to take that one and use for yourself, but what we did, and we did also in our company, was that we went there, we were inspired about it, because also they already have some things that they propose that you are going to do in every sprint, things that they propose that you're going to do once a year, or like every time that something changes and things like that. And it's a lot more people that are adopting it, so it changed quite a lot in the last 2 years. Like if you went there last year and then this year with the website, you see that changed completely. So it's a lot of good knowledge there that we also use to improve the development lifecycle. And then it's important that you have it as part of your process, you know? So the same way that you have, like, I don't know how you have your processes, but we have the sprints and what we should do in each sprint and so on. We added there that you have to do static analysis, you have to do code review, you have to do security analysis and so on. At least in the beginning, this is what we think it should be explicit, you know? Then you have to also rethink roles and responsibilities towards security. So actually, you always say that security is everyone's responsibility. So all of us, all of you, and everyone, if you're going to have a breach, it's not because that security person failed. Everyone failed. You know, somehow in the process, you failed to pick up the fruits. You know, and then that is what everyone has to think about. But one of the things that we did and like actually like all the companies that we are working in Norway are adopting this, is the security champion role. That was actually proposed by the OASP as well. But each company kind of choose in a different way. This is what we have in FARA. And then this is what we put for the role, that we wanted someone that was helping us to include these activities as a part of a general thing. And then this person is not the expert, and it's not the only one that is responsible for security, but is the one that is focusing more on security, is learning more on security, someone that I talk to talk about different things about security or different activities that we want to do. And then what we also noticed very fast that we needed to assure that they had some time just for security. So now each one of the security champions, that is one security champion in each team, has 8 hours to work on security. And that means, for example, doing some analysis, extra analysis on security for the functionalities, or setting up the static analysis tools on the build, or thinking about security and learning more about security. We have also some meetings to discuss security and discuss what's possible that is going to come and things like that. So, yeah.
80 hours per year?
Per week. Yeah, each week they have 8 hours to work on that. And they can also, that doesn't mean that they are going to use it. Maybe they can delegate to another developer to do it. It also can be used to go for training or to go for conferences and things like that. Yeah. So far we managed to assure that, and we saw that we really needed that. Otherwise, it's very easy to just go for every other activity and not focusing on security. Yeah. So then also they didn't have anymore the excuse of like, I don't have time for that. I'm like, yes, you have. You have 8 hours this week. And I haven't used that. So that was very important. Another thing that is important with the security champion is that then we discuss. And then it's not this thing that I say to them, this is how you're going to do. We discuss things and say, like, you know, we need to improve this part with the static analysis. And then they say, okay, we are going to use this tool. We are going to do this way or that way, you know. And then we discuss about these things. And they know what is going to work and what's not going to work, right? I don't. But we can discuss about this and define one strategy. Then, actually, now I have mixed feelings about it. but we started with this thing that first we did some surveys in Norway, and 50% of developers didn't have confidence that they were addressing security in a good way, and that they were even able to address security in a good way. Then we started with this thing that, like, okay, we need to do training and create a training program. But actually, we started in the beginning to focus more on this kind of like classroom type of training and so on. And that failed big time. But also because everyone knows that like the retention that you have in a classroom, it's just like 5% of the knowledge. So it was not really impacting development at all. Then what we realized is that we needed to find all the ways that then we were creating awareness and training at the same time. Okay, so then that doesn't mean that you're not going to create a formal training. And there are, nowadays, if you go online, you find like 100,000 different training programs for security. One that is most popular now in Norway, it's called Code Warrior. Have you heard of it? Yeah. So that one we are starting to use a little bit, but it's still like, it costs a lot, it's very expensive, and like still we don't have like a perfect solution for how to do this. But what we found out is that if you start creating different activities towards security, the awareness is increasing, and then we don't need any more formal trainings. So, but it is still an important part to do. Then, then based on this, we started finding ways that the team can start thinking like an attacker. And then one of the ones that we thought that gave us a lot of things, not that increased the security of the system, but created awareness quite a lot of how the system is to do threat modeling. Who here does threat modeling or have done once? Okay. So I hope your experience was the same as ours. But we have tried with different people. We use mostly the Microsoft threat modeling that is using the Stride to take a look on the data flow diagram and try to see where you have problems. Of course, this is kind of, depending on when you are doing, it may be too late, because then you're going to just find a lot of problems that you have with your design, but you cannot act on it. And we realized that quite fast. So if you haven't done for like forever, and then you just do now, you will probably find a lot of things that we could have done this in a better way, but you're not going to fix it. So the best thing is to try to do as you go. Then what we are doing in Norway is that we are proposing to do at least once a year, and then when you have a big change, then you do. So then, for example, you are on-prem and you're going to change to a cloud, then you do. And then, or if you are like, you have a set of functionalities, but you are changing completely the functionalities, then you do a threat modeling. So we found that it was very good, and we found a lot of different issues, and we could improve some things with security. But I think that one of the things we found was that the main advantage was awareness. So everyone got much more awareness about security, and product owners as well. And it was a way for the product owners also to get involved and to understand what security means. Yeah. Then we also included some other activities to elicit and document security requirements. One that we are trying, and we believe, but is not really popular, is to do like the same way that you do use cases, you do abuse cases or misuse cases. So it's to take your system and try to think of like, okay, these are the functionalities that we think that it's the way that it's supposed to be used, but then you start to think like, how can it be misused, right? So then with that, you can create tests for that, you can create functionalities, and you can do different things. To be very honest, no company really wants to keep doing this. They do once, they think it's fun, but and create some awareness so we can use. So the way we are using it is to do training, basically, but they are not using this as a part of daily life. So, yeah. Even though, as researchers, because this came from a research in Norway as well, we believed that that was going to be the best thing ever. Yes. We would solve all the problems in security, but no, that didn't work. So one thing that I'm doing as well, and then this is kind of research, but not really, it's research, but it's also practice, is that I asked them that, okay, you don't want to do this case, but at least every time we have an epic, you're going to do a security analysis on this epic, on the functionalities that are coming. So you don't need to do a formal threat modeling, but you have to spend some hours taking a look at which are these functionalities that are coming, and what is it that we need to do towards security. Maybe there is nothing, but maybe there are some things. So then, for example, you're going to create a new app, right? So then you have to go and take a look on like that epic that's coming for the next sprint. It's not like for all sprints, but next sprint, this epic is coming. So then you go through, and then we go through these different parts and ask them ourselves, like, do we need to think about this? Right? So then, for example, we sell tickets. So then one of the things is like when we create something about the tickets, we have to think about non-repudiation, right? So then if someone says that they didn't buy, but we are charging them, then we have to find a way to prove that they bought it. Then it got very bad, but one of the things that I am trying to work with them, and most developers cannot think about this yet, is like is there anything that you can do to detect an attack? Right? So it's not only about network and how you detect an attack with a network, but maybe with some functionalities, depending on the way that is used or misused, you can detect an attack early, right? So then, but that is something that the mindset, at least with our developers, is still not there. So, and it's very hard to come up with ideas about that. But this is an exercise, and we are getting better with that. And of course, like you can use logs, you can use different types of logs to do that, but it also depends on you to start thinking this way. Otherwise, you just think like, okay, we want the functionality out and that's it, right? But you have to start thinking a little bit more on preventive and like be more proactive towards security. And that is actually one of the points that I have been struggling quite a lot to ask them to find things about it. One thing that's like in Norway it's starting to be big is this part of prosecution, because now you can prosecute someone for doing something wrong. So we had a case actually in one of the companies, and they were able to do it because they were very good with the logs and everything, and yeah. So then it was a case that we have out in the press. Yeah. And then the guy is in jail right now. Yeah, and then of course, every time, because it's very easy to forget about GDPR and about the privacy things and so on. So I want to make sure that in every epic, in the functionalities that we are coming, we have taken a look and thought, like, is there anything about privacy here that we need to worry about? And then we many times we came up with some things that were related to privacy that if we hadn't done this analysis, we were not going to find so early. You know, so it's like our way to kind of focus on security all the time. Then with all these things, what we started also was to start to track the risks. So then it was kind of like when we started creating more awareness, people started seeing like, oh, there is a risk for this, there is a risk for that. And they didn't know how to track that. So then what we did was that we created a project in Jira. And then this project, you can anytime just add a risk. So like you're doing one analysis like this, then you found a lot of risks that you don't know if it's going to materialize or not, then we register as a risk, you know? And then what we do is like, we created a type that is a risk and that has a specific workflow. In the beginning, we created a very, very simple workflow that's like open, assessed, mitigated, and closed, or you can just accept the risk, or you can just reject the risk. So that was very simple. just for us to start with this process. And actually, like in 1 year, we really see the difference in everyone's, Everyone is creating risk, the product owners are creating risks, the developers, the testers, everyone. So wherever we see something in the product or with the project and so on, we are creating. So then the way that we implemented this also was that we put together with the normal risks. We just, like the ones that are related to security, we have a flag, and then we say this is security related. So then we can monitor all the risks and see all the risks that are going to the projects, and then we have to talk to the product owners to prioritize or not prioritize, and then we can have all these discussions, So before it was hard to kind of tell the product owner that they had to focus on this or that, but now it's more concrete, so then I can get together with them and say, like, we have these 10 risks in your product, let's discuss about it, what do you want to do, and so on. So it has been quite good. Of course, if you see these peaks here, is when I get the meetings with the product owners. Because, they just the risks are there, and then if no one says anything, they just let the risks be. And then I have to set up meetings with them and say, like, okay, you have these 10 risks, now we have to do something. If you don't do anything about it, you are accepting it. If you do something about it, or if you were going to mitigate or create an action or so on, then we are going to do it. So, and that's I try to do this every 6 months. So that's why it was December, and then it was now. And then probably they just feel like, oh, I'm free from Daniela for 6 months. Yeah. But we are working on this, and this is something that we really believe, and it has increased quite a lot, the security awareness and the thinking of security in the overall company. And other companies are also doing that. So this is another thing that it was also research-based, and we also thought that it would give a big focus for security. And at first, the researchers thought okay, we are going to do protection poker like we do planning poker. Every sprint, when you do the planning, you're going to also do a protection poker, thinking about security and how the functionalities that are going to come for this sprint are going to affect security, and then if you're going to prioritize that or not. So the idea is that you do every sprint, but that didn't happen. So we tried, and then we did sometimes, and then people really like it and creates awareness, and the team discuss security and so on. But helps so far, as we see, just as a awareness thing, but not for doing all the time. But that's something that we can also do from time to time, just to kind of discuss security in the team. It's a fun way to discuss. So if you want to know more about it, you can check online. You just search for protection poker and Syntaf, and then we have there how to play and how to do it. And the companies really like when we go there and play once, or if you do a tutorial, they come a lot of people and so on. But then they try once, and then that's it. So it didn't really flow that much. Yeah, so then the other thing that we always say, of course, is to include the securities in your pipeline. And it's very important that it's part of the build, So then if you just do saying that it's going to be ad hoc, just people don't do, So if it's not running smoothly, then people stop doing, or people just ignore the warnings. If you have also set up with too many warnings, people just ignore them. We have a lot of problems with these tools still, but there are options. And then this is one that's have you seen this? It's the periodic table of DevOps tools. And then before, 2 years ago, I think there were 3 only of security, and these are now what they are proposing for security. So it's increasing the number of tools that you can use and that you can add to your pipeline. One of the most important are the static analysis tools for security, and that if people, at least in Norway, if you get an audit and you got a breach on GDPR and you don't have static analysis tools running as part of your pipeline, you probably will get a fine. you know, because then they think that like the basic thing of security you didn't do. That doesn't mean that the static analysis like are so good, but at least it helps a little bit. It's almost like compiling for security when you have the right rules running and when you have the right setup for it, you know. So, and of course, like there are many different tools and you can choose whatever you want to use. There are open source as well, and there are the paid ones. But like, of course, like there are some problems also, like they can take long to run and so on, depending on how you do and how you use it. So, yeah. But static analysis tools are the most kind of basic. Then the second one that we always talk about is to take a look on the third-party vulnerabilities. That one was really an eye-opener for some of the companies we had, because they had so many libraries that they didn't have any strategy on like, when are we adding libraries? What libraries are we adding? Do they have vulnerabilities or not? If they have, like when you added, there were no vulnerabilities, but then afterwards came something, no one was aware of it. There was no strategy of like how you now replace this library. Right? When it's time to replace a library. When are we going to have time to do that? Because the software is deployed, the software is there, we are not touching that functionality anymore. Then many of the product owners just said, I'm not going to change, you know, because changing means that they're going to have to test everything again, do a lot of different things. So now we are still working on that, on like what are the strategies that we are going to have to replace libraries when they become vulnerable. You know, and how do you know that they became vulnerable? That's also a challenge. Then, how long time do I have? Okay, yeah. So what we talk about is actually like, if you manage to do all these things that we talk, like the 9 other steps at least, and you start to be more mature in your security and in all the other things, then you can start going for this, you know. Most of the small companies, it's very hard to kind of set a penetration testing program or a bug bounty program and so on. Why? Because it's costly, it's very expensive, and it's not easy to run, it's not easy to build, and it's not easy to manage. You know, so you have to be quite prepared to that. So the level of, we always say that like there are some teams that will be able to run a bug bounty program, for example, be part of it. Some other ones will not be able to. One is because like it will be so many vulnerabilities found because everything, all the ground fruits are there. So then there is no point to the company to be paying again to that. And the other one is that it's costly, so it's very expensive. So in FARA, we still didn't manage to secure money for that. So, and we don't know when it's going to be, because to be a company that the hackers want to do anything about it, you have to have money. You have to say, like, we are going to pay this much. And we don't have that much money to pay for it. So then it's better to not be part of it than to... What we are starting to do is to do kind of internal ones. So we are basically setting up more internal bug bounties program, because then we don't need to pay so much outside. And there are more knowledge inside of our company than we know. The big ones, then they have their own penetration testers, like Visman, that is one of the companies we have. They have their own penetration testing guys, like just for doing penetration testing on the different services they have and so on. So all depends on money and depends on maturity. And even these big companies, for example, some of them, they are allowed to participate on the bug bounty program, and like, for example, Visma has 150 different teams. So like some of them are allowed to be part of the bug bounty program, some of them are not, because the level of maturity is not there. And the level of maturity is based on all these things that we talked about. So like I said, like you can create red team and blue team exercises or different approaches and strategies for that, but that all requires money and knowledge that many small companies don't have. Then bug bounty program is also about like thinking, should you build your own? It's just like internal. It's not the best, but at least it helps a little bit. Yeah, and then just to summarize, as you see, like it's a lot about risks and how much risks you want to take and how much you want to pay for that. So the whole approach for security has to be risk-based, has to be based on like, what is it, the risk that we are willing to take and how much are we willing to spend, right? And then you have to think about people, the roles and responsibilities, who is responsible for what, who is doing what. It's about process and all the activities that you are putting together to make sure that these things happen. Knowledge and tools, and then it's about deciding what you want to do, but not like it's not one strategy for all teams, but even for one team, you are going to decide the different strategies depending on what's going on. So to me, it's kind of like in every sprint, you need to decide how much do you want to go? How much do we need to go in terms of security for what is happening in this sprint or for what is happening in the roadmap for the next 6 months or something like that, you know? So what I ask them is to always be thinking of the risks and thinking of like strategically, what is it that we need to do? Because security costs. We cannot say that doesn't cost. It costs. It costs money, it costs effort, and in some parts, it will slow down the functionality output, but you have to do. So we don't have this option anymore that we are not going to worry about security. It's too risky for that. So, yeah, so then that's it.